The neon sign outside the little diner flickered against the darkening sky as Clara Johnson wiped down the last counter. It had been a slow Tuesday, like most nights in this small town where folks passed through but rarely stayed. Clara didn't mind. The quiet gave her time to think, to hum to herself, to remember why she opened this place in the first place, to feed people who needed more than just food. She was halfway through turning off the coffee machine when a sharp flash of red and blue light poured through the window. Her heart skipped. Police. She moved to the glass and peered outside. Parked across the street was a single motorcycle, its chrome catching what little light was left in the evening. A man in a worn leather jacket stood beside it, his hands raised slightly as two officers edged closer. Even from behind the glass, Clara could feel the hostility in the air. The biker was big and shaven, the kind of man most people might cross the street to avoid. But what Clara saw wasn't menace, it was exhaustion. His shoulders sagged, his head lowered, and his legs wobbled as if he hadn't slept in days. The officers barked orders she couldn't quite hear, but their tone made her stomach knot. One reached for his belt. The biker lifted his hands higher, but there was fear in his movements, not aggression. Clara felt the old ache in her chest, the one that came when she saw unfairness right in front of her. She'd grown up watching people judged before they had the chance to speak, and she swore long ago she'd never stand by and watch it happen if she could help it. Her hand hovered over the door handle. It was late, she was alone, and she knew stepping into that scene could mean trouble. But she also knew what her mama had taught her. When someone's dignity is on the line, you don't wait for permission to protect it. Taking a deep breath, Clara pushed the door open. The bell above the frame jingled softly, almost drowned out by the sharp command of a police voice. She walked toward them anyway. The night air was thick with tension as Clara stepped off the diner's porch and onto the cracked pavement. Her apron was still tied around her waist, her hands trembling slightly, but her voice came steady. "Evening, officers," she said, standing between them and the biker. The officers glanced at her, surprised, then back at the man they had cornered. Their hands hovered near their holsters, sharp with suspicion. Clara could feel the weight of their eyes on her, could feel her own pulse hammering in her throat, but she didn't move. She looked at the biker, really looked at him up close now. His eyes weren't wild or threatening, they were bloodshot, tired, and heavy with something like shame. His lips trembled as if words failed him. Clara turned back to the officers. "He's not causing trouble, he's hungry, he's worn out, let him sit a while, and he'll be on his way." One of the officers frowned, his jaw tight. "Ma'am, this isn't your business," he said firmly. Clara didn't flinch. "It is my business," she answered, her voice calm but edged with steel. "That's my diner right there. He's my customer tonight." She crossed her arms, planting herself firmly between the man and their suspicion. There was a long silence, broken only by the soft ticking of the motorcycle engine as it cooled. The biker lowered his hands slowly, glancing at Clara as if he couldn't believe she was doing this. The younger of the two officers shifted uneasily, muttered something to his partner, and finally both stepped back. "Fine," one of them said, "but if there's trouble, it's on you." Clara exhaled only after the police car pulled away, its red taillights vanishing down the road. For a moment, the night was quiet again. She turned to the biker, whose voice cracked when he finally spoke. Why'd you do that?" he asked softly, eyes glistening under the dim streetlight. Clara gave him a small, tired smile. "Everybody deserves a little dignity," she said. Then she nodded toward the diner door. "Come on inside, let's get you something warm to eat." Together, they walked back through the jingling door. The diner felt different that night, though only one customer sat inside. The biker chose the corner booth, the one nearest the window, as if he still needed to watch the road. Clara set a steaming plate of fried chicken, mashed potatoes, and cornbread in front of him without a word. She noticed the hesitation in his hands, calloused and rough, as though he wasn't sure he deserved to touch the food. Then, slowly, he picked up the fork and began to eat. Clara busied herself behind the counter, giving him space. She had seen men like him before, people carrying heavy pasts, people others wrote off without knowing their stories. She didn't ask questions. Sometimes, silence was the greatest kindness. She just made sure his coffee stayed hot and his plate stayed full. The man ate as if it were the first real meal he'd had in weeks, pausing now and then to press his palm against his eyes. After a while, he spoke, his voice hoarse. "You didn't have to do that out there," he said, not looking up from the crumbs on the plate. Clara leaned against the counter, arms crossed gently. Maybe not, she replied. But sometimes the right thing isn't about what you have to do. He looked at her then, really looked. His eyes were watery, and there was a softness in them that didn't match his tough exterior. He swallowed hard. I won't forget this, he whispered, almost as if he were making a vow. Clara waved him off with a small chuckle. Eat your food, she said. Promises don't pay the bills. But inside, she felt something stir. She'd done what her conscience told her to do, nothing more. Tomorrow, she expected, he'd be gone, another stranger passing through, another soul she'd never see again. She locked up after he finished, wished him safe travels, and turned out the diner lights. As she walked home under the quiet night sky, she told herself it was just one of those moments, a simple act of kindness that would fade into memory. She had no idea how wrong she was. Clara woke the next morning to the faint hum of engines in the distance. At first, she thought it was a storm rolling in over the hills, the kind that rattled the windows and made the neon sign buzz. But as the sound grew louder, steadier, she knew it wasn't thunder. She stepped outside the diner, still clutching her apron strings, and froze. Down the main street, motorcycles stretched farther than her eyes could see. Chrome and leather glinted in the early sunlight, and the air vibrated with the roar of 200 engines. Her heart raced as the line of bikers rolled to a slow, disciplined stop right in front of her diner. People from nearby shops peeked out their doors and windows, whispering, eyes wide at the sight. Clara wiped her palms on her apron, unsure whether to be afraid or amazed. Then she spotted him, the same man she'd defended the night before. He climbed off his bike, helmet under his arm, and walked toward her with a steadiness that made the crowd fall quiet. When he stood in front of her, he didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. You stood up for one of us, he said, his words carrying over the rumble of idling engines. You treated me like a human being when you didn't have to. Today, we stand for you. Clara felt her throat tighten. Behind him, rows of bikers nodded in agreement, their faces tough but their eyes warm. It wasn't intimidation she felt, it was solidarity. The kind that wrapped itself around you like a shield. For a moment, she was speechless, her hand pressed to her chest as if to steady the emotions rising in her. The man gave her a small, grateful smile. Open your doors, Miss Clara, he said gently. You've got customers. And just like that, the engines died down, the helmets came off, and 200 bikers began filing into her little diner, filling it with a life and energy it had never known before. The diner had never seen anything like it. Every booth, every stool, even the little corner tables usually left empty were packed with bikers. Their leather jackets and patches turned the small room into a sea of black and chrome, but the air wasn't heavy with menace, it was alive with laughter, with the clatter of plates, with the low rumble of voices swapping stories. Clara moved between tables with coffee pots in both hands, her apron already stained, her cheeks flushed from the heat of the grill. She should have been overwhelmed, but instead her heart swelled. The man from the night before sat near the counter, watching her with quiet pride. Whenever her eyes met his, he gave her a nod, as if to remind her that this was no accident. This was gratitude, multiplied 200 times. Every time she refilled a cup or set down a plate, a biker would grin, say thank you, and sometimes slip an extra bill onto the counter. The tip jar overflowed so quickly she had to pull out a second one. What struck Clara most wasn't the money or the crowd, it was the respect. These were people the town usually looked at with suspicion, the kind folks crossed the street to avoid. Yet here they were, treating her diner like a sacred place, as though her kindness had transformed it into something more than just four walls and a counter. Near the end of the rush, Clara leaned against the doorway to catch her breath. She looked out at the tables filled with strangers who suddenly didn't feel like strangers at all. Her eyes brimmed with tears she didn't bother to hide. She whispered more to herself than to anyone else, kindness, it always comes back. The biker at the counter heard her. He raised his coffee cup in a silent toast, and, one by one, the others followed, lifting their mugs and glasses until the entire diner echoed with a cheer that shook its walls. For the first time in years, Clara didn't feel like she was just running a diner. She felt like she was part of a family.